that well-known California sound? Unmistakable. Where did it come from? California, of course. Who invented it? Well, that answer may surprise you. Hi, I'm Henry Mateus. Thanks for tuning in. Today's video is all about Brian Wilson and the Beach Boys music and how it all began. The Beach Boys was a rock vocal group made up of three brothers, Brian, Carl, and Dennis Wilson, their cousin Mike Love, and their childhood friend Al Jardine. They formed the band in Hawthorne, California in 1961. Brian was the eldest of the Wilson brothers, born on June 20th, 1942, and he was the musical director and songwriter of the group, although the other members did contribute songs and ideas to the Beach Boys albums. Mike Love was the eldest of the group, born March 15th, 1941. Then Al Jardine, born September 3rd, 1942. Dennis Wilson, born December 4th, 1944. Then Carl Wilson, born December 21st, 1946. They all sang harmony and lead vocals. Brian played piano, keyboards, bass, and guitar. He could play drums too, well enough to teach the other guys what he really wanted in the song. Carl played lead guitar and some keyboards. Later in his career, he played guitar on a couple Steely Dan albums. Dennis was the drummer and could also play piano, violin, viola, and cello. Al Jardine played guitar, bass, and banjo. Mike Love was the front man lead singer and also played saxophone, guitar, piano, and of course, the tambourine. Now, although the Beach Boys are often considered the originators of the California sound, they did not invent that California sound. They did make it unique with their vocal stylings and brought it to the mainstream, but they were heavily influenced by surf guitar sounds of bands like The Ventures, The Surfaris, Dick Dale, and the Deltones. The genius of the Beach Boys was adding beautiful 4- and 5-part vocals with a unique stack of harmonies to the surf guitar music. Brian Wilson is known as a musical genius, and I'm not going to disagree, but I would like to give the other Beach Boys a bit more credit than they have received over the years. Dennis wrote and co-wrote songs and lyrics, and also sang lead on Do You Wanna Dance? Carl Wilson co-wrote many songs, including God Only Knows, Good Vibrations, Good Timin', and he sang lead on God Only Knows, I Can Hear Music, several others, including one of my favorites, Girl Don't Tell Me. Girl, don't tell me you're right. Al Jardine co-wrote many, including Surf's Up, Lady Linda, and Help Me Rhonda, on which he also sings lead vocal. Help me Rhonda, help me get her out of my heart. Mike Love co-wrote many of the Beach Boys' most famous songs, primarily contributing lyrics including Good Vibrations, Fun Fun Fun, I Get Around, California Girls, Surfin' Safari, Kokomo, and Surfin' USA, just to name a few. Surfin' USA. Brian sang lead on Surfer Girl, In My Room, The Warmth of the Sun, Let Him Run Wild, and several more, including Don't Worry Baby. I'm talking about original studio recordings. Carl sang most of Brian's lead vocals on tour because Brian stayed home and worked in the studio writing and recording. So you will see lots of videos of live shows with Carl singing Don't Worry Baby and other Brian Wilson songs, but the original radio hits were none other than Brian. So Brian Wilson gets most of the credit for all of the Beach Boys material, and rightfully so. But the other Beach Boys were very talented also. Brian was exceptional when it came to writing music and vocal harmonies, but he was not responsible for all those great lyrics. Mike Love was very good with putting words to the music. Most Beach Boys songs were a collaboration of at least 2 or 3 of the guys. Brian Wilson was a musical genius, no doubt about it. He heard beautiful melodies and harmonies in his head, along with string arrangements and horns and orchestras. But being a genius also means being highly intelligent, and Brian Wilson was smart enough to know that getting ideas and suggestions from other musicians and singers will more than likely improve any piece of music that one can compose and produce all by his or herself. I'm going to stay focused on the Beach Boys' music and not dig deeply into their personal lives. I can talk for hours and hours about all of their musical accomplishments and personal ups and downs in life, but I won't. This is a mini doc about the Beach Boys' start and early musical career, not a full-on documentary that goes into every detail of their lives. To learn more about their musical careers and personal lives, please Google search them with your device. There is much to learn about each and every one of them. Also, please check out my friend Scott Michael's new video, Where is Beach Boy Brian Wilson's Grave? His Tragic Life, on Dearly Departed Tours with Scott Michaels, right here on YouTube. Excellent video, great channel, very cool guy. Brian Wilson, Mike Love, and two friends first performed at Hawthorne High School as Carl and the Passions. Soon afterwards, Brian convinced friend Al Jardine to join him and Mike Love and brother Carl, and after doing so, brother Dennis also joined the band. Love came up with the name the Pendletones. Dennis was the only real surfer out of the bunch, and he suggested that they write songs about beaches and surfing and the surfer lifestyle. Sounds easy, right? I guess so, because Brian went to work and came up with the song Surfin', and with cousin Mike Love wrote Surfin' Safari. Murray Wilson, the father of Brian, Carl, and Dennis, was an occasional songwriter and arranged for the Pendletones to meet his publisher, Height Morgan, and his wife. Mr. and Mrs. Morgan both loved the song Surfin', and on September 15, 1961, Surfin' was recorded as a demo. On October 3rd, a more professional version was recorded at World Pacific Studio in Hollywood. Murray brought the demos to Herb Newman, owner of Candix Records and Era Records, and on December 8, 1961, the boys had a record deal. A few weeks later, the single was released and the band's name was changed from the Pendletones to the Beach Boys, a name that a young promoter, Russ Regan, from Era Records came up with. Surfin' was a regional success on the West Coast and reached number 75 on the national Billboard Hot 100 chart. Murray decided to manage the band and got them their first paying gig on New Year's Eve 1961 at the Ritchie Valens Memorial Dance in Long Beach, California. All five boys sang with Brian playing bass, Dennis on drums, Carl lead guitar, Al Jardine rhythm guitar, and Mike Love as frontman, main singer, and he sometimes played saxophone. They played wherever Murray would book them for decent money, and in February 1962, Al Jardine left the group and was replaced by David Marks. After being turned down by Dot and Liberty, the Beach Boys signed a 7-year contract with Capitol Records at the urging of staff producer Nick Vanette. On June 4, 1962, the Beach Boys debuted on Capitol with their second single, Surfin' Safari, backed with 409.
Let's go surfing now, everybody's learning how, come on a safari with me.
Billboard's June 9th issue praised Love's lead vocal and said the song had potential. Surfin' Safari climbed to number 14 and got airplay in Phoenix, Arizona, and New York, of all places. The Beach Boys' first album, Surfin' Safari, was released in October 1962 and marketed as surf music. But it was different than the surf music of that time, which was mostly instrumental and used a heavy spring reverb on the guitars. In January 1963, the Beach Boys recorded their first top 10 single, Surfin' USA. The album of the same name was released in March and reached number 2 on the Billboard charts. It launched surf music as a national craze, and because of the Beach Boys' vocal stylings, it changed the sound of the genre originally pioneered by Dick Dale. The Surfin' USA single brought the band a much larger teenage audience and made them legitimate rock stars. Al Jardine returned in spring 1963 so Brian could make fewer touring appearances. David Marks left the group in October 1963 due to issues with the Wilsons' father Murray and some creative differences. So I will now talk briefly about Murray Wilson, father of the 3 Wilson brothers. He was the Beach Boys' first manager, and he founded their publishing company, Sea of Tunes, with Brian. Now, I wasn't there, of course, but it is documented that Murray verbally and physically abused his sons. He denied those accusations, but I don't think that the Beach Boys would just make that kind of stuff up. Anyway, you can read all about it in Brian Wilson's book, I Am Brian Wilson, a Memoir, by Ben Greenman. I have read a lot of books and I have done a lot of research, but the purpose of my mini docs are to share the music and the love behind the music. My YouTube channel is a music channel. I don't want to spread gossip or hate or bad vibes. Like I said, you can look all that personal stuff up on Google. Now, back to the music. In 1963, Brian Wilson produced several singles for other artists. He also checked out some of Phil Spector's recording sessions at Gold Star Studios in Hollywood. When Brian first heard Be My Baby by the Ronettes, which was produced by Phil Spector, he was overwhelmed and immediately influenced by the vocal arrangement and the recording itself. In Brian's own words, he started to design the experience to be a record rather than just a song. Now, for those of you who are not songwriters or producers or recording artists, I will try to elaborate on Brian's vision. If you have ever been to an open mic night at a bar or club and listened to a singer playing the acoustic guitar and singing their original song, it is very bare bones and raw. The experience of recording the song and producing it entails lots of ideas, lots of trial and error, like how many harmony vocals should we add, or is guitar the main instrument, or piano, or maybe an organ sounds better, or let's do the first verse all acoustic, then bring in the rhythm section, then the string ensemble. Or wait, horns instead. Should we speed the song up or slow it down? Who should sing the lead vocal? Those are just some examples of the record production process. It's a lot of work, but hell of a lot of fun. I like performing live on stage in front of an audience, but my number one favorite musical environment is the recording studio. Please check out some of my original songs and videos right here on my YouTube channel. Enough about me, back to the Beach Boys. Still in 1963, the third Beach Boys album was released, Surfer Girl.
Do you surfer girl, surfer girl?
It was the first time that the group hired outside musicians to record parts on a Beach Boys album. Many of them were from Phil Spector's Wall of Sound production. Only 1 month after the release of Surfer Girl, they released their fourth album, Little Deuce Coupe.
She's my little Deuce Coupe.
As a finale to 1963, the Beach Boys released the massive Christmas hit Little Saint Nick on December 9th, written by Brian Wilson and Mike Love. I'm telling you, Mike Love wrote some very clever lyrics on many Beach Boys songs.
It's the Little Saint Nick, Little Saint Nick.
In 1964, following a successful Australian tour in January and February, the Beach Boys returned home to face their new competition, the Beatles. Both groups were on Capitol Records, and it seemed like the label was promoting the Beatles quite a bit more. The Beach Boys' fifth album, Shut Down Volume 2, became their first since Surfin' Safari not to reach the top 10 in the USA, although it did generate a top 5 single, Fun, Fun, Fun.
And she'll have fun, fun, fun.
All the Beach Boys liked the Beatles' music, and Brian was rattled by them and felt heavily pressured to keep pace with the Beatles. In Brian's own words, the Beatles ultimately eclipsed a lot of what we had worked for. They eclipsed the whole music world. In April 1964, during the recording of I Get Around, the Beach Boys fired Murray as their manager. He did continue to give them business advice. I Get Around was released in May and reached number 1 in the US and Canada, proving that the Beach Boys could compete with the British invasion pop groups. I don't care who the band is, a great record is a great record, and I Get Around is definitely a great record. It appeared on their 6th album, All Summer Long, released in July 1964.
I get around, round, round, I get around, get around, round, round, I get.
In June 1964, Brian recorded most of the Beach Boys' Christmas album with a 41-piece orchestra in collaboration with Dick Reynolds. By the end of 1964, The heavy load of touring, writing, recording, and producing became too much for Brian. On December 23rd, while on a flight from Los Angeles to Houston, he suffered a panic attack. He decided to withdraw from touring so he could concentrate entirely on songwriting and record production. For the last few days of 1964 and into early 1965, studio musician and soon-to-be a star solo artist, Glenn Campbell, agreed to take Brian's place for live concerts. Carl Wilson took over as musical director on stage, and he sang most of Brian's lead vocals also. In March 1965, the Beach Boys released their 8th studio album, The Beach Boys Today. It was the first time the group experimented with the album as art form. Brian's songs were evolving from surf and cars to vulnerable and slightly neurotic emotional themes. In April 1965, Glenn Campbell's own career success pulled him from touring with the Beach Boys. Columbia Records staff producer Bruce Johnston took Campbell's place and became a full-time member on May 19, 1965. His first recording session with the Beach Boys was on June 4th for the song California Girls.
California Girls.
The song was included on the band's next album, Summer Days and Summer Nights, their 9th studio LP. It charted at number 3 in the United States. It was the second single from the album. The album went to number 2 on the charts. Help Me Rhonda was the first single from the album, and it hit number 1 in the spring of 1965.
Help me, Rhonda, yeah, get her out of my house.
Because of contractual reasons, due to his previous deal with Columbia Records, Johnston was not allowed to be pictured or credited on any Beach Boys records until 1967. To satisfy Capitol's demands for a Beach Boys 1965 Christmas LP, Brian came up with Beach Boys Party, their 10th. It was a live in-studio album consisting of mostly acoustic cover songs, kind of an early preview of the unplugged trend. It had a cover of the Regent song Barbara Ann, which unexpectedly reached number 2 on the charts.
Ba 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 Barbara Ann.
In November 1965, the band released a single, The Little Girl I Once Knew, with There's No Other Like My Baby as the B-side. It reached number 20 on the Billboard chart. Their next album, Pet Sounds, was certainly the Beach Boys' masterpiece, as Sgt. Pepper was the Beatles' masterpiece. Released on May 16, 1966, it was widely influential and a beautiful work of art. Brian collaborated with jingle writer Tony Asher for several of the songs on Pet Sounds. It was definitely a departure from the Beach Boys' earlier style. Al Jardine stated that it took the band quite a while to adjust to the new material because it wasn't music you could necessarily dance to, it was more like music you could make love to. Now I can talk forever about Pet Sounds, but I have a better idea. If you haven't already listened to the album, please get a copy on vinyl or CD and kick back and listen to it. Those of you that are familiar with Pet Sounds already know what I'm talking about. So even though it was a blend of classical stylings, orchestrations, and more inventive harmony voicings, it managed to still produce 3 top 10 hits. Wouldn't It Be Nice, Sloop John B., and God Only Knows.
Wouldn't it be nice if we were older? Home, let me go home. Stop the John B. God only knows what I'd be without you.
For the rest of the summer 1966, Brian worked heavily on finishing the group's next single, Good Vibrations. Released on October 10, 1966, just when we thought it would be impossible to follow Pet Sounds, they hit a grand slam. Good Vibrations, in my opinion, has to be one of the best songs in pop history. The production is unsurpassed, as well as the arrangement, instrumentation, and vocals. It is definitely in my top 10 greatest songs of all time. The next project was called Smile. The recording lasted from mid-1966 to mid-1967. It never was released and the album was shelved and a scaled-down version was released instead in September 1967 called Smiley Smile. Like I said earlier, this video is not a complete documentary about every last detail of the Beach Boys' careers and personal lives. I will mention a few more key points though. Here is a list of Beach Boys singles that reached the top 40 on the charts. I Get Around, Help Me Rhonda, Good Vibrations, Kokomo, Surfin' USA, Fun Fun Fun, California Girls, Barbara Ann, Sloop John B, Wouldn't It Be Nice, God Only Knows, Do It Again, Tears on My Pillow, Caroline No, Little Deuce Coupe, Surfer Girl, Be True to Your School, Dance Dance Dance, Don't Worry Baby, and Little Saint Nick. Here is a list of their studio albums. Now, there were many other Beach Boy compilation albums, greatest hits, the best of, and live albums. But the albums I just showed you on that list were their original studio albums. By the early 1970s, there was a huge decline in the Beach Boys' popularity. So in 1974, Capitol Records and the Beach Boys decided to release another greatest hits type album. But Mike Love did not want it to be called Best of the Beach Boys Volume 3. He came up with the name Endless Summer, and it truly is an incredible double album. This album reintroduced the Beach Boys to a younger generation of music lovers. Some credit must go to the George Lucas film American Graffiti, as that film's soundtrack featured Surfin' Safari and closed with All Summer Long.
We've been having fun all summer long.
In 1975, Capitol released another excellent compilation album, Spirit of America. While the Beach Boys have experienced periods of internal conflict and lineup changes, they have never officially broken up and have continued to perform live throughout the decades to present day. Sadly, Brian Wilson passed away just a few weeks ago on June 11, 2025. But the music will undoubtedly live forever. Here are a few more important facts about the Beach Boys. Brian suffered many personal demons throughout his life, including reclusion, overeating, substance abuse, depression, and periods of intense paranoia. Psychologist Eugene Landy helped Brian in 1975, but was let go due to his extremely high fees. He returned in 1982 as Brian's therapist, but really overstepped his boundaries and took advantage of Brian's money and was very controlling. One day in 1968, Dennis Wilson was driving home from Malibu, and he picked up a couple of girls that were hitchhiking. He didn't know it at the time, but they happened to be a couple of the girls that were hanging out with Charles Manson, and they were part of the Manson family, Ella Jo Bailey and Patricia Krenwinkel. He drove them to the destination they had asked for, and then a few days later, he noticed they were hitchhiking again, so he picked them up again. Only this time, he took them back to his house to party. Those were the days of free love, so you can only imagine what went on. Anyway, Dennis went to the recording studio, and he left the girls at his house. When he returned home late at night, his house was full of hippies. The girls had invited a whole bunch of the Manson followers to come and hang out there. So this is how Dennis and the Beach Boys got acquainted with Charles Manson. They eventually recorded one of his songs. It was called Cease to Exist. They retitled it Never Learn Not to Love. And they didn't give Manson any credit. And then we all know what happened then, the murders and all that, and Manson ended up going to prison. But those were very scary times for everyone, especially the Beach Boys. All the Beach Boys were married at least once, and they all had children. As the Beach Boys continued as a group into the 80s, 90s, and beyond, they added many other members, including actor John Stamos. There is so much more to say and learn about the Beach Boys as a group and individually. Please Google search them and pick up a book or two about them. But most of all, please listen to their music. It is such a cool feeling to be cruising on the Pacific Coast Highway, looking at the ocean while listening to Beach Boys music. It's magical and gives me goosebumps just thinking about it. Man, was I lucky to be born and raised in LA, and luckier to have the opportunity of cruising PCH in Malibu, blasting my Beach Boys CDs. I hope you all get a chance to do that one day. Thanks for watching, and please like and subscribe.
The girl